everyone. This is Anthony Baxter. I'm your host tonight, and we're going to be going over my book, Uprooting the Spirit of Rejection and Abandonment. How many of you know we all have been affected by this spirit? This episode, we're going to be talking about the cords of abandonment, the cords of abandonment. So, when we talk about abandonment, we think of being left behind or parents ceasing to look after us. But there's a type of abandonment that doesn't get talked about much, and it affects us worse than those others. It's called emotional abandonment. Emotional abandonment. The further the world gets away from God, the doors in the spirit realm open to allow the spirits to hit the earth and bind us into ungodly practices and reactions to emotional instability that were not meant for us to deal with. Amen. Let me silence this phone so we can get to the nitty gritty of this. All right. So, in my book, I wrote this here. I wrote, when our nation began to turn away from God 60 years ago, about 60 years ago, it opened the gates for spirits to enter the earth and bind us in ungodly practices and reactions to emotional instability. And every year that goes by, it gets worse as we're moving even further away from God. So basically, as we are moving further away from God, and we can see this, I mean, we got legalized marijuana. I was looking at the news, and they were talking about in states allowing strip clubs to serve hard liquor, and things are just getting worse. Same-sex marriages and all these type of things. These are things that are not of the Most High God. And so the further we get away is opening doors for demonic activity to hit the earth and begin to affect us as human beings. So, what is emotional abandonment? That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Emotional abandonment is a subject emotional state in which a person feels deserted, left behind, or neglected by someone significant in their life. Now, this could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be your boyfriend, it could be your husband, it could be an aunt, it could be an uncle, it could be a teacher. It's whoever is significant in your life. This can occur in various relationships, as I said, such as romantic partnerships, friendships, or parent-child relationships. Emotional abandonment can lead to feelings of loneliness, insecurity, and low self-esteem. It can result from physical absence, neglect, or emotional unavailability. That emotional unavailability. You know, in the 80s, when crack cocaine hit the scene and hit the low income areas and things of this nature, uh, those parents that were using this were not emotionally available to their children as well as themselves. So a lot of children of that era, they call them crack babies, they were dealing with parents that were emotionally unavailable or lack of support and validation from the parent who is supposed to provide care and connection. That's supposed to supply care and connection. Now, God's blueprint for family. I spoke of this in the last episode. Both parents are needed because both parents provide something that that child needs. Okay, you have the nurturer in the mother, and you have the disciplinarian in the father. Now, today, the nurturer works an 8-hour job, and in some cases, she might have 2 jobs. So the nurturer is not available. So, where is that child getting the nurturing needed to mature emotionally? And what can become of this, or what would the consequences be for a child that does not have that nurturer there to give them what they need to nurture them emotionally. Now, the disciplinarian, the father, he too is one that has the ability to nurture as the mother, just like the mother has the ability to be a disciplinarian. But God's blueprint was the man was a disciplinarian, the woman was the nurturer. As I said in the last episode, I used to like this show when I was growing up called Waiting Till Your Father Gets Home. The kids would act crazy and the mother would be there going, pulling her hair out saying, just wait till your father gets home. Things like this. So, but in my book pertaining to this, I wrote this. I wrote, children dealing with emotional abandonment hide their authentic self. What do I mean by that? Authentic self. God has created us all with purpose. He's given us talents and gifts. He's given us abilities to be who we are. No one is like another. But when you're dealing with emotional abandonment, you push who you are away, or that authentic self, you put that behind defensive walls and masks of pretense, okay? Seeking acceptance and feeling that they aren't good enough, they push themselves down and bring up a person they feel people will accept. So what they do is they push their authentic self, their God-given self down, and they come up and become or act out someone that they feel that the individual would accept. Some people call these chameleons because, you know, you'll be in one crowd, you act one way, you be in another crowd, you act another way, you be in another crowd, you act another way. And what happens in this 5, 10, 15 years of doing this is you lose that authentic self. Many people are walking around today not knowing who they are because they've pushed down the authentic self that God had created them to be, and they're being what people want them to be, or maybe even who they want to be. But how many of you know that God created us with purpose, and he has a purpose for us being here? In order to fulfill that purpose, we must walk in our authentic self, Now, emotionally, abandoned children seem to depend on others to make them feel right within themselves. They have a consistent need for approval for someone else to feel accepted. Do you know anyone like that? Are you like that? Do you get your validation from others, or do you get your validation from yourself? Do you do what others want you to do because you're scared that you may lose them as a friend? Or do you say, no, I'm not going to do that because that goes against my morals of what I was brought up to do or not to do? You see? Now, there is a sense of low self-worth and self-esteem that comes over children that have no one to help shape them emotionally. Now, most parents just didn't know any better because they were abandoned emotionally themselves by their parents. Now, even families with caring parents can fail at the meeting of emotional needs of their children. So this isn't something that is a single parent home. You can have both parents in your house. You know, you may have everything you need. They're providing the food, they're providing the shelter, they're providing the clothes and everything that you may want, but the emotional nurturing is missing. The emotional nurturing is missing, and we'll get more into what that looks like as we go through this episode. Mhm. Quality time is the way to uproot emotional abandonment. If you want to uproot emotional abandonment in your child's life, give them quality time. Quality time. In chapter 2, we talk about stop, look, and listen. If you remember that, that was 2 weeks ago. Stop, look, and listen. When a child goes to school and has a bad day, they need the nurturer to talk to, or the disciplinarian, someone. in the home to talk to. These days, they aren't home. When they child gets home, no one's there. Why? Because both parents today must work to supply the child with what that child needs. Now let's look at a toddler. A toddler in daycare is excited when it sees his mother come into daycare to pick it up, our father to pick him up. But what do? We put the child in the back in the car seat. We get home, we take him out of the car seat, we throw him in a playpen or put him in a room, and we go do what we need to do. We don't take time out to give that child quality time. We don't give that child the ability or that child the quality time that it needs before we put them in a toddler. Now, in my book, I wrote this. I recalled waking up and my mother and father had already gone to work. And after school, I would go next door until my mother got home. When a child wakes up in the morning and their parents are gone, and when they retire at the end of the day and they're still not home, it creates an emotional void in the child. Then, when the child becomes a teenager, their parents become strangers to them. They become strangers. If you look today and really look, do you really know your child? Or do you know who they want you to know? You see, emotional abandonment, a child is going to get the emotional love and support that they need from somewhere. Okay, they're going to get it from somewhere. So it's a painful and bitter realization when one day you come home to the truth that you don't understand or know the child you gave life to. The reason behind this is the parents weren't there when the child needed them the most. Now, it's not the parents' fault totally. Okay, we have to work. We have to work to supply the home. We have to work to supply the food and the clothing and things of this nature. And inflation, everything's going up. Hourly wages are staying the same. So it takes two, it takes three in some cases. But the bottom line of it is, it's not always the parents' fault. But what we need to do as parents is carve out some time in a day, whether it's a half hour, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, and just focus on that child. Back in the day in the 60s, it's early 70s, everybody used to eat at the table and you'd have conversations about how the day went. That was quality time. That was quality time. Today, everybody eats when they eat. The kids eating in their room, dad's eating in front of the TV, mom's food's in the microwave because she's going to eat when everybody goes to sleep, and ain't nobody communicating. Or if you're at the table, the kids are playing with their phone, texting, and this, and that, and the third. There's no communication going on. There's no communication going on. Put it like this. When you meet somebody, you're going to converse with them. You're going to talk with them. They're going to share things with you. You're going to share things with them. And this is how you create that friendship, that bond, that trust. So if you don't have that with your child in your home, that bond, that trust of communication, how are you going to know that child? They're not sharing things with you because you're too busy. You're too busy. So we must take time out and spend time with your child. Spend quality time. Set some time aside, whether it's a toddler or whether it's a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old. Take some time out and spend with them. That quality time, you'll see a big change in them. I wrote this in my book pertaining to my own self. In my own life, as I was dealing with drug addiction and being rejected and emotionally abandoned, I passed down what my parents gave to me. As I said in the first chapter, momentum is picking up in each succeeding generation. So it's a little worse as we see in today's youth. Now look at today's youth, look 10 years ago, it's getting worse. Not being there for my kids to mentor them emotionally caused a disconnection in the father-son and father-daughter relationship. Emotionally, we were strangers talking and laughing, but not connecting on a deeper level. If you want to connect on a deeper level, you must communicate. You must spend quality time. You must put the phone down, put everything down, and just focus on that child. Stop, look, and listen. That's what I call it. Stop what you're doing, look the child in the face, and listen to what they're saying. Don't watch TV and say, "Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, a child feels they don't have your undivided attention. Give them that undivided attention. I guarantee you this: if your boss was talking to you, I bet you give him your undivided attention, because if you didn't, that money be gone. So what's more important, your child or the money? So give your child the same respect that you would give that boss of yours, knowing that they got control of hiring you or firing you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote this also. I wrote emotionally crippled people pass on what is within them. Emotionally crippled people pass on what is in them. Many people, they say, I grew up here, I'll use myself for instance. I said, you know what, when I have my kids and I get married, I'm going to be totally different. You see, growing up, I looked at the Brady Bunch, Leave It to Beaver, all of these sitcoms on TV, not understanding that it was all acting. But I wanted my family to be like that. So I said, when I grow up, my family's going to be like Leave It to Beaver. You know what I'm saying? But how could it be that way if that's not what was in me? So what was in me was passed down. That I did the same exact thing. You see? So we can want something, but if we're crippled, it's going to be very difficult for it to come to full fruition. So emotionally crippled people pass on what is within them, and the cycle goes on and on. We as parents must understand that when a child starves emotionally as a toddler, it can lead to much bigger issues later in life. It will take the hands of Christ to heal and restore them to completeness. It will take the hands of Christ to restore them to completeness. Many of us are walking around today crippled, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. I was walking around crippled until I began to do this research, and God put it on my heart to write this book. It took me 2.5 years to write this book, because through this book, it was my healing. It was my healing. And I know if I can heal from it, you can heal from it. So the Bible tells us in Proverbs 22:6, it says, direct the child into the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. It's our job as parents to not only supply food, clothing, and shelter, but also emotional and spiritual support for that child's maturity into manhood or womanhood. That's our job. That's our job. I like to put it like this. A child is born, and it's the mother and father's job to instill in them everything they need to be successful in life. It's our job to pull out the talents and the gifts that they have, to get them involved in things that will pull out and challenge those gifts and talents, so that as they grow up, they can walk in the gifts and talents to fulfill their purpose that God created them for. Now, once they grow up, it's our time to release them. We did our job. We instilled the things that needed to be instilled. We helped purge out the things that didn't need to be. We helped mature them emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Now it's time for them to go into the world and live life and follow the will that God and the purpose that God had given them. That's our job. But the thing of it is we've gotten so distracted by the world and this and that and the other thing and the other thing, that we're forgetting our God-given duty as parents to our children. We're getting distracted by the things of the world. We're getting distracted by the TV. We're getting distracted by this. We're getting distracted by that. But what about the child? What about the child? We're talking about uprooting rejection, y'all. We're talking about uprooting rejection. I wrote in my book here pertaining to directing a child. I wrote this. In some cases, it's not the parent, but a stranger you don't know who is teaching the child things you have no clue about. See, I was that kid that I was going around the corner hanging out with the cats on the street, learning street stuff that my parents didn't know about. See, what kids do is they come and show you the person that you want them to be. But when they're away from you, they being somebody that you never would assume that they are. Why? Because we don't know our kids. We're not spending the time needed to where they feel that important to you. That's a good one. Important to you. Okay. So it says in some cases, it's not the parent, but a stranger you don't know who is teaching the child things you have no clue about. I was 9 years old hanging out with older kids on the block. They taught me many things that my parents were not aware of that pushed me into a lifestyle that was ungodly and destroyed the lives of others. I longed for the attention I was getting and didn't want to lose their support, so I did what they asked. How many of y'all did that? You did what people asked you to do, even though you didn't want to do it or you knew that it was the wrong thing to do, but you did it because you didn't want to lose that friendship. You didn't want to lose the emotional support that they are fake love, false love. Because see, that's gang members. You join the gang because they feel you feel a part of, you feel wanted, you feel love, and all these type of things. But as things go, they start asking you to do things that you really don't want to do. But in order to be a part of this, I got to do it, so you do it. This is how it started. While you, the parent, are at work or home being non-emotional with your child, they are out getting what they have been longing for at home. They will get the emotional support one way or another. That wasn't the plan of God's. Parents were to bring up their children in the nature and admonition of the Lord. I'm sorry. So that's God's blueprint. And see, this is the thing that we must understand. God has set a blueprint for the family, and each family member has a responsibility. Each family member has a responsibility. And the thing is, we're not fulfilling those responsibilities these days. And we wonder why all of this killing and all of this stuff is going on with teenagers stealing cars, ramming the cars into buildings, going in, looting, shooting, all these type of things. We wonder. Now, there's many women that have dealt with abandonment and have the feeling of rejection growing up, and they grow up, they become teenagers, and they have children, or they get in their 20s or 30s, and they have children, and they want to have a two-parent home. They want to have a two-parent home. But what happens at times is that abandonment of the past resurfaces with the child's father, or the woman's baby daddy, for one reason or another. You know, uh, when a father walks out of the house of a child and its mother, it can rekindle that abandonment that was felt growing up, and vice versa. When a woman walks out of a relationship with a man that dealt with abandonment issues, it can reopen those things if they haven't been dealt with. If they haven't been dealt with. I wrote this in my book. Not getting the emotional support from your child's father can reopen those wounds of emotional abandonment you dealt with as a youth. The pain of rejection and emotional abandonment can feel unbearable, which leads people to turn towards any number of things that provide them with an instant release. This might include drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, or food. And when the children, excuse me, and when the children, like the mothers, get rejected and left emotionally abandoned, they can grow up rejecting moral or ethical standards. What they need is the support and encouragement of their parents to help them grow up with the confidence and self-esteem necessary to accomplish what God has created for them. So what can happen is that abandonment that you felt as a child, once it's rekindled by something or triggered by something in your adult life, to numb that pain, you're going to turn to something, whether it be food, whether it be drugs, whether it be sex, whether it be television. You're going to turn to something to try to numb the feeling of that emotional abandonment. And it's not good. This is why it's very important to really do some soul searching and ask yourself, were my parents emotionally there for me when I grew up? Did I get the emotional what's the word I'm looking for? Were they emotionally there to where I was able to mature emotionally? Because when you mature emotionally, you can handle things maturely. Have you ever seen a person that just, they're just flying off the handle because emotionally they're not emotionally mature, because individuals did not assist them to grow emotionally. They may have been there physically. They may have gotten all the food. They may have ate great. They may got everything they wanted, but emotional, it's important. It's important. It's important. It's important. Mhm. Listen to this. I wrote this in my book. Many of us who've been emotionally abandoned and rejected are married today. Some have married expecting their marriage partner to fill that itching, empty place inside of them. However, no spouse can make up for all the years they were not loved enough by their parents. Only through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ can we find the healing and wholeness that we need. That we need. I'm gonna share a little bit of my story. My books are basically dealing with me. So I wrote this. Before my first marriage, I was in a treatment center getting help for crack addiction, and my son's mother had come to visit. I was feeling empty inside. I didn't have the drugs to mask my emotions, nor did I feel like I was worth anything. One day we were talking, and it came to me to ask her to marry me. When I got out of treatment, she said yes, and we got married. Today, I see that I was trying to fill an empty place within. The marriage lasted only 11 months. The reason for the divorce was wrong motives. I wanted her to fix my brokenness. And when I understood she couldn't, I turned to outside things to numb my emotions. This brought more destruction to the home. See, sometimes we, I would say, use people to try to get what we need that we didn't get when we were growing up, and that's what happened with me. When I came off the drugs and in the treatment center, and I started feeling these emotions, I needed someone to help me fix me, you see. But when I found out that the only person that could fix me is me, then I turned back to what I was doing before I went into treatment. And that just made things 10 times worse. It just made things 10 times worse. Emotionally involves helping a child grow, providing them with the supportive and nurturing environment. That's helping a child grow healthy and emotionally. Here's some tips to help you in developing your child emotionally. Number one, show unconditional love and support. Make sure the child knows they are loved and supported no matter what. No matter what. You see, love is unconditional. True love is unconditional. We may get mad, but the love is still there. So let that child know, despite that they are loved and you support them. Number two, encourage expression of feelings. Teach the child to identify and express their emotions in a healthy way. You know, being a child, boys were taught that you're not supposed to cry. Well, that's an emotion. So you teach tell a boy, no, you ain't supposed to be crying. What you crying for? No, that is an emotion. Allow that child to express that emotion. Allow them to express their emotions. Because if they don't express it in a healthy way of crying, they're going to express it in an anger way because they're going to stuff it. And the next thing's going to happen is they're going to punch walls and do all kind of other crazy stuff. Number three, teach coping skills. Teach coping skills. Help the child develop coping mechanisms to deal with stress and difficult emotions. See, these things help a child mature to learn how to deal with the real world. When things don't go their way, they have coping skills. How do they get those coping skills? They got them because their parents helped them develop them, not the streets, but the parents. Set boundaries. Establish clear and consistent boundaries to help the child feel safe and secure. Establish clear and consistent. You see, sometimes we'll create a boundary, but then we'll take away the boundary. And then we'll put the boundary back, and then we'll move it this way, and we'll move it that way. That's not consistent. Now the child's confused. Make sure what you do, you stay consistent. What's consistent? Meaning that it's done this way all the time. All right? Stay consistent. Number five, independence. Allow the child to make appropriate decisions and but let them make the choice, because they'll learn from what it is that they did wrong. They'll do right the next time. Provide positive reinforcement. Acknowledge and praise the child's efforts and achievement. Doesn't matter if it's wrong. Doesn't matter if they did it and they didn't do it right. Give them some kudos for even trying. There's people that have dreams and ideas and aspirations, but they too scared to go out and do it. See, a child that is brought up with positive reinforcement, they're going to go out and they're going to do what they desire to do. They're going to go out and start that business. They're going to go out and start a janitorial service. They're going to go out and do these things because they were brought up with positive reinforcement. And number seven, be a good role model. Children learn by observing. Your child is watching you. Have you, look, I'll go on Facebook. I'm seeing kids in front of TV twerking and doing all this stuff. Where they get that from? They seen the mama twerking. They're watching you. I watched my dad. He rolled joints. Then he'd be gone. I try to roll a joint. I mean, they watch you. So be a good role model. Oh, we're going to do things. We're going to do things. But, do those things behind closed doors, away from your children. Try to use proper etiquette. Don't be cursing all this stuff in front of your kids. You know what I'm saying? They're watching you and they're going to mimic what you do, because to them, if you're doing it, I can do it. But we have this thing where we say, well, I'm grown. Kids don't understand grown. They just understand this is what you do. And you're my superhero. So I'm going to do what you do. Be a good role model. Be a good role model. Now, ministering to your child, there's those that believe in God and there's those that don't. But whatever you do, if you're teaching your child and you're talking to your child, you're ministering to them. Okay? So I'm gonna give a couple of topics here that I think are very important. Security. Let them know they matter by protecting their mind, body, and spirit. If you protect their minds, body, and spirit, that you're putting a fortress around them, preventing a lot of the evilness to get in. Encouragement. Encourage your child in things they are interested in doing. Let them know you believe in them and you support them. You never tell your child that, hey, you can't do that. Tell them you can do that. And whatever I can do to help you, I'm here. Comfort your child after disappointment. Whenever your child falls or gets a bad grade, anything that brings disappointment, let them know it's okay. And they will do better next time. And ask them what you can do to help. Hug them, give them some love. Let them know that you're there to support them. And last but not least, loving, discipline, and respect. Whatever you do with your child, do it from a place of love. And in that place, you will see care come back to you. Disciplining from love instead of anger will bring you great fruit and respect. A lot of children know they did something wrong. But if you are cursing them out, if you're beating them with extension cord and all this other crazy crap, that's not showing discipline in love. That's showing discipline in anger. And that child is not going to give you the respect, and you're not going to get the fruit of your labor through that child or from that child. So love them and discipline them and respect them, and I can guarantee you it'll all come back tenfold. Now, after each chapter, as I stated, we have review questions. So the review questions for this chapter is number 1, what is emotional abandonment? It's in the book. You read the book, you'll know what emotional abandonment is. Number 2, list a few ways people respond when they feel emotionally abandoned. So if you were emotionally abandoned, how did you respond? But it's in the book. So if you read the chapter, you should be able to answer these questions. Number 3, fill in the blank. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for blank. All right. Number 4, is it reasonable for a person to expect their spouse to fill the void they stingingly from childhood, abandon, or rejection? And number 5, who is our source of healing and restoration? Oh, we got two more. Number 6, list 4 areas parents should focus on to help their children emotionally, their child's emotional stability. What are 4 areas that you should focus on to help build your child's emotional stability? And number 3, briefly describe each focused area from question 6. So these questions are for you. They're not for me, they're for you. They will help you do a better job with your kids than maybe that was done with you. Because the bottom line, none of us want our kids to feel abandoned. None of us want our kids to operate out of a emotion of rejection. None of us. We all want our kids to thrive. We want them to excel. We want them to feel loved and cared for. And through this book, Uprooting Rejection, we can uproot a lot of those demonic spirits that are trying to overtake our children today and lead them down a road of destruction. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about numbed emotions. Numbed emotions. Oh, y'all going to love this one. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So get the book. Go to Amazon, search online, just put in Uprooting Rejection. Put my name right after, Anthony Baxter, and order one. Read it and reread it, because I'm going to tell you, it will do you a lot of good. It'll do you a lot of good. I thank you all for joining me on tonight. And for those that will be watching later, I pray that God's Spirit will touch you and that the information that you receive will be one that will not just go in your ears, but it will go into your heart, and you will begin to move in such a way to bring out that rejection and that abandonment that you or your children or both you may be encountering at this time. Until then, God bless you. We'll see you next week.